Hey there, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Morgan Radford.
And I'm Aaron Gilchrist, outside today on the Avenue of Americas here in New York City, just outside the iconic Radio City Music Hall. And part of the reason that we're outside today is because this is really a pandemic milestone for the city. Most of, if not all of the COVID restrictions here in New York City are being lifted today. So that means that we're cutting back on the occupancy limits. We're cutting back on the social distancing. Morgan, we're cutting back on the need for masks. And I'll tell you, as somebody who just moved to New York City a few months ago, it's really been nice to see what I'm used to seeing when I would come here as a tourist, New York coming back to life.
Yeah, it's definitely coming back to life. And I can say, as someone who's been here for almost 8 years now, the city still feels different today. And it's interesting watching people sort of shed their masks, but of course still be respectful of their neighbors, which I think is sort of a sign that this is what things are going to look like going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into some of the news that's being made today here in New York City and in some other places. New York City really wasn't just the first major epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic. Pockets of mini epicenters emerged across the 5 boroughs and the state, for that matter. The city that never sleeps shut down. Times Square and Broadway were deserted. No part of this state was untouched by COVID-19. Now, here we are, 444 days after the first case was reported here, and we're seeing the city wake up and take the biggest step yet on this road to reopening. Now, there are also some other good things to report on the vaccination front today as well. There's some new numbers coming out from the World Health Organization that show COVID cases declined for a 3rd week in a row. 4.8 million new cases reported around the world this week. That's about a 12% drop from the previous week. Outside New York, well, many other cities are also showing signs of reopening. Chicago, for example, tickets are now on sale for Lollapalooza. That's a 3-day music festival that's going to return with in-person attendance in July. People who go will need proof that they are fully vaccinated or they have a negative COVID test 24 hours before the event. Of course, we have a team of correspondents covering the reopening of America now and how cities and states are handling the new CDC mask guidance. Gabe Gutierrez in the heart of New York City for us in Times Square. Chris Jansing just over the state line in Connecticut for us. And Savannah Sellers spoke to Dr. Anthony Fauci. We'll hear some of that conversation. But Gabe, let's start with you in Times Square today. That ghost town is starting to show some signs of life too, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Aaron. I'm actually not too far from you. And isn't it fitting today that it's a bright, beautiful day? It was more than a year ago that we were standing right here in an eerily desolate Times Square. Well, today, as you mentioned, Aaron, some of those capacity restrictions are now a thing of the past.
New York, the one-time COVID epicenter in the U.S., is officially lifting its mask and social distancing mandates for fully vaccinated people.
I think we've all waited long enough, and I think it's time for people to live and be happy again.
We're back. We're stronger than ever.
Many large events, including Broadway and the New York City Marathon, are planning to roar back later this year.
I think what you're seeing is extraordinary. This comeback is ahead of schedule.
But across the country, mask confusion. While many major retailers are now ditching their face covering requirements, in Texas, the governor just issued an executive order banning mask mandates. Violators even face a possible $1,000 fine, a far cry from California, where the indoor mask mandate remains until mid-June.
To be safe, I keep my mask on. To keep other people safe.
7 states have already topped the president's 4th of July vaccination goal. 70% of adults with at least one shot. Nationwide, the number is 60%.
We're winning the war on the virus.
The CDC is reporting less than 18,000 new daily COVID cases, the lowest in almost a year.
The past week has been a big week with progress and milestones that set us on a path out of this pandemic.
That path has been long. In Manhattan, we first met James Malios as he agonized over laying off workers.
Deciding is the hardest part.
Now his restaurant and so many others here have a literal shot in the arm.
How good does it feel to be back in business full swing?
When we spoke last time, I did not ever think we would be having this conversation. So it's pretty great. It's pretty great that you're here.
You know, And Gabe, one of the big questions has been about how people are going to be checked for their vaccination status. Are you hearing anything about how restaurants and other businesses are going to do that? How they're going to check to make sure that people are vaccinated when they come in?
Yeah, and Aaron, and that is a big question that many people are asking. It's, right now based on an honor system, but as many people we've been speaking with will say, sometimes that's not the best way to go about it. It will be very difficult for small businesses, especially, Aaron, to be able to prove that people are vaccinated. We've seen some people saying that they're going to, kind of wear their vaccination cards while they're dining in restaurants. I don't know if most people go that far, but that is a complaint not only here in New York, but really, across the Northeast and many other parts of the country. How will that be enforced? There is a kind of a vaccine passport type system that the state of New York has been talking about, but still, many questions about how that will be widely implemented. So that certainly is the major question right now, exactly how to prove that people are vaccinated. But from what we've been seeing right now, just a lot of excitement to know that these restrictions and these mask mandates, for the most part, at least generally, this seems to be a major milestone for the city. The mayor of New York calling it a comeback much sooner than anticipated, Aaron.
Yeah, very much so. That Gabe Gutierrez for us, just a few blocks from me here up in Times Square. Gabe, thank you. Let's check in now with MSNBC senior national correspondent Chris Jansing. She is in Stamford, Connecticut today, another place where COVID restrictions are being loosened today. Chris, I know you're at a brewery there that is one of the places that's having to deal with this question of trying to figure out how to balance the rules there in Connecticut with some of the guidance that we're seeing from the CDC in the last couple of days here. Talk to us about what's happening there in Connecticut.
Yeah, the decision that was made by the governor was we're going to follow the science, which means we're going to follow the CDC. And what that means is that all these tables can be full now. There doesn't have to be social distancing, no restrictions in terms of how many people can come in. But take a look at the sign that's on that post. It says face mask required. The CDC says if you're fully vaccinated, you can come in here without a mask. This is the first time I've reported from inside anywhere without a mask, and I am fully vaccinated. Connor Horrigan owns this fine establishment. Why did you decide, at least for right now, you're asking your employees and folks as they walk in to keep their masks on?
Yeah, well, part of it is protection for our employees. A lot of them have gotten vaccinated, but a core part of our demographic has just gone through the most recent wave of vaccinations. They're just getting their second ones. And so that kind of core demographic hasn't been fully vaccinated. So we kind of want to give it
younger folks in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah, 30s and early 40s. And so we want to give it a little bit of time to kind of see how things play out over the next month. And then we'll basically reassess and go from there.
In the meantime, you've really had to pivot, and I can show folks, obviously the core of Half Full Brewery is brewing, but they also have coffee in the morning now, if you want to get it, and donuts and a very fine croissant.
There you go.
But how have you looked at your business differently now moving forward, now that there's this kind of big day where they're saying you have a lot more options?
So, I mean, we're super excited. We've been operating kind of a pop-up version of a vision that we've had for a number of years, right, to create a central gathering space, right, like the quintessential central gathering space. And that isn't the right business to be in the middle of the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So now that everything's getting lifted, we see that people are getting more confident they're coming out. So now I feel comfortable moving forward, for instance, with the live music event planning, with the co-working space, with the coffee shop and the tasting room. That's all situated indoors.
Do you think 1 month from now we're going to see a totally different feeling and space here?
I think so. I think people still, a lot of us, we're vaccinated, we go and we take our masks off, then we walk into a room, right, in recent days, and we see a lot of people and we're still like, I'm going to put it back on. So I don't know if the confidence is fully there yet, but I think in a month's time, it certainly will be, and certainly by the end of the summer.
Connor, thank you so much. And I think it's important to mention that the business people I've talked to, this really is sort of a defining jumping off point, but they know there are a lot of decisions that still have to be made. For example, where Aaron, you are in New York City, where I am, urban areas, when are the offices going to open so that places like this will get more foot traffic? I'm just a short walk away from the Stamford train station. So there's a lot of things that are going to unfold over the summer. But the bottom line is today is kind of a point where they see change that's really coming.
Yeah, sort of an overture before we see the full orchestra bloom around here in the tri-state area. Chris Jansing for us in Connecticut today. Chris, thank you. You know, as states like New York open up and lift some of the restrictions, there's a bit of confusion still about some of the CDC guidance around wearing masks right now. I want to bring in NBC News Now anchor Savannah Sellers. She's come outside with me here. No mask. I know, right? It's a beautiful day. Both fully vaccinated. But you also had a conversation with Dr. Anthony Fauci about some of the guidance that the CDC has given out. A lot of this is really on the honor system.
Yeah.
What did he have to say about that?
It really is. First and foremost, he said, look, it's not perfect. There's actually a couple things about this new guidance that he said are not exactly ideal, but it's what we're having to work with here. First, let's listen to what he said about how this honor system works with unvaccinated people. So right now, though, while we do have so many people unvaccinated, do you trust or do you trust that the system is to trust unvaccinated people to remain masked?
Well, that's one of the dilemmas that this entire recommendation sort of engenders. And that is that when you go into an establishment, that since we don't have vaccine passports, you don't know who is vaccinated and who is not. And importantly, you don't know if there's an infected person who comes into your establishment, being a restaurant, a bar, or what have you, and you don't know whether that person might be infecting someone else in your own establishment. For that reason, there are many establishments who are now saying, okay, it's fine that the CDC says that vaccinated people don't have to wear a mask either outdoors or indoors, but if you want to come into my establishment, I still maintain you have to wear a mask because I don't want to be responsible for the spread of infection in my establishment. And we're seeing that. I mean, people are doing that, and it's understandable why they are doing that.
So, Aaron, the other thing that I asked him about that's making people a little bit confused is the fact that just right across the river today, we have our colleague Dasha Byrne. She's in Hoboken. We can get there in, 20 minutes or so? There, you cannot go indoors without wearing a mask somewhere. That's a little bit confusing, and Dr. Fauci said the only thing that's really going to fix this confusion, more people getting vaccinated.
Still need to get those numbers up for sure. A lot of people have said, though, that it does feel like things are returning to normal. Did Dr. Fauci talk at all about how long he thinks it will take before we get back to normal, or whether sort of a pre-pandemic normal is even possible?
He did. And actually, Aaron, his answer gave me a lot of hope. I was really happy to hear it straight from him. Let's listen. What do you think, Dr. Fauci, in 6 months, a year from now, do you think life will feel some sense of normal? I know we're getting there, but really, will it feel that way?
If we continue on the pathway of getting people vaccinated at the rate we're doing right now, I believe by the time we get into the summer, and certainly as we get into the fall and late fall, I believe we're going to approach a considerable degree of normality. It's not going to be perfectly normal, but it's going to be as close to normal. I think that would make people satisfied that they're feeling like things were the way they were before all this happened.
Are you personally optimistic about where you see the case numbers at right now?
Yeah, I never declare victory before we're there. I think that would be premature, but I'm feeling good about the way the numbers are going and the direction of the trend.
Aaron,
perfect, right?
The elements out here. Come out into the sunshine.
There we go.
Good job with that. One quick thing, my favorite part of that interview, I actually asked him, we've heard you say you would run outdoors and such without a mask. What about indoors? And he said he personally would grocery shop, go to a movie without a mask on. He would do it. So it made me feel better about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to get the perspective from someone who's been really digging into the science and can offer that. Savannah Sellers, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Get some rest. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
Bye.
Morgan, we'll wrap it up here. I think, obviously with the CDC guidance relaxing, the states relaxing some of their rules, it's still going to be a lot on us and a lot on businesses to make the changes. I'm going to come back inside now, and I'm going to put my mask back on because in our office building, this is still something that's required.
Yes, that is right. All right, Aaron, thank you so much for that very comprehensive COVID update all across New York and beyond. We appreciate it.